started. It's made up of people who are family members, descendants, as well as those people who were slaveholders of our family members. And we got together to try to find out exactly who this lady was, Eliza Tevis, and bring it forth and try to tell a story. So we're in the process of gathering information and trying to keep everybody pointed in the right direction. It is beginning to get real interesting about what we are finding. I do want to introduce you to a couple of people here. We have a panel. My sister, Edna Sharif, she's going to do a presentation. We're doing this because we think we might be able to have a better impact by each person who has certain things that they're doing. They will bring it to your attention, let you know what they're doing and how it impacts the whole story of Eliza Tevis. So you're going to hear from Edna Sharif. You're also going to hear from Barbara Stevens. Her family was owners of the Hikes Plantation over on Hikes Lane, and she's been with us ever since we got started. She's really into this. She and her family, her son and other people in her family, have decided they would like to get in and find out more about what goes on. I also wanted to introduce you to Regina Kimbrough. And Regina is also a person whose roots go back to Eliza Tevis and also directly back to Mary Beard. And we're going to talk a little bit about how that all hooks up. Cynthia Cook, who is the person who runs the Bashford Manor Bed and Breakfast, fell and hurt her back in some kind of way. She's in Florida. She was going to join us by Zoom. She won't be able to, but Barbara Stevens is going to read a little note that she sent. Barbara, you want to intro, and we're welcoming you to the Bashford Manor Bed and Breakfast. Barbara?
Sure. I will be reading her words. This local history group grew from our deep interest to learn about Eliza Tevis, her life and times. We learned that in 1851, her white friend, Nancy Chenoweth Bray, of the original family of the Bashford Manor Bed and Breakfast, keenly felt the injustice towards Eliza when the Hunley family refused to honor the will that gave Eliza 40 acres that would become the Newburg community. Nancy acquired this land at $600 at the auction to convey to Eliza at the same price, knowing in 1851 it was the right thing to do. So much has come to light about this remarkable woman. There are some very interesting facts about Eliza Tevis. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. I overlooked Sherelle. We call it Sherelle. Ernestine Lyons Goodwin. She's going to also do a presentation, and her family has been trying to get Eliza Tevis out front for I don't know how long. And Sherelle has really been the one who's been pushing. She gets real pushy about meetings and being sure that we all get together. And so thank you, Sherelle, for beating us up when we needed it. Okay, these are the people who are going to be talking with you. Let me just say that we thought that if we could, in some way, when we get through, you'll have a little bit more appreciation for why we're so interested in Eliza Tevis. We also want to be sure that you understand that this Eliza Tevis Society is new. We haven't really formalized it, but we all are considering ourselves brothers and sisters trying to find out the information. And if any of you have any additional information that you can add, let us know. We have been fortunate right now. We did a podcast earlier about a month ago, and we're in the process of trying to get looking at another podcast from another part of the Kentucky. And we hope to try to get this all together so that we can collect a lot of the different things that people are researching about Eliza Tevis. I would say that the outline that we're going to follow, we're going to start out, well, Cynthia was going to start out actually and talk about the bed and breakfast and how it would, do you want to add to that?
I'm not
Barbara?
sure that I can be
Okay.
of any great amount of help. I know partially the history of this house. It was from the time I can remember, and I'm getting pretty old. It was owned by the Scoggin family and then the Jones family. And then I can't remember the name of the next family, but she was the director of Farmington for a while. And then she moved to Florida, and that's when Cynthia bought it and turned it into a bed and breakfast.
Mhm.
And it's a beautiful home, and much of the house itself is original, pretty much original. It's made some changes, a few changes, and it's just a very lovely site of an old farm.
Mhm.
It's a farmhouse. It's not a mansion or anything more than a farmhouse.
I would say that we're going to connect the Bashford Manor home with Liza Tevis so you can understand why this place is important to Newburg and how it all hooks together. So as the other people are doing their presentation, we'll get to talking about this place and how a friendship between two young people came together and ended up being allowing Eliza Tevis to purchase land in Newburg and begin that process of growing that community. Anybody else? Sherelle, you have anything to say about it? Okay, all right. Then what I want to start out saying is that if you would bear with me and just kind of in your own mind, visualize a female who was a slave and was emancipated and who began to use her freedom to set up a community of free Africans. Now we have a picture. We're not sure that this is her, but somehow somebody found out we were doing this and said, "I think this is a person you want to you're looking for." And I'm going to see if we can show you that picture. Now we cannot confirm that this is Liza Tevis, but right now it's the closest thing to it, so we're holding on to it until we can verify. Hang on, I'm going to try to show you that picture. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay. It was given to us, and we have tried to have it authenticated. As usual, we had one group that said no, and another group that said yes. We're just hanging on to it until we find out. Her clothing and things, it was pointed out to her, would probably put her in somewhere in around the 18, I think was what, 1870s, 18.
Yeah, between 1820s and 1860s.
She ended up being wealthy, and that clothing that she has on indicates that this is probably a photo of a wealthy person, and so it kind of goes that maybe this is her, and she's set for a photo, and we're just trying to figure out, is it her? We did not, we thought we would never get a picture of her. And if this is it, that would be great. I do want to say that in trying to visualize who she was small of stature, but somehow she had an uncanny ability to figure out how things work in the political world of that time, and she was someone who was looked up to as being a kind of a healer, a nurse, a doctor, if you will, of the time. People came to her for all kinds of things, and there's a story that she nursed the Hunley brothers back to good health after what fever was it?
The smallpox.
The smallpox
epidemic in 1819.
epidemic. That would hold true, but then people say that she was also active in the community when she was enslaved, helping other people out on other plantations around the Bardstown Road area. Now, having said all that, you wonder sometimes, okay, what was she after? Was she going to try to be wealthy or what? But somehow she figured out that if she did exactly what her enslavers were doing, she would be able to be wealthy, and she would be able to provide services to people that she left on the plantation. So I think if we end up having a movie of her, that would be where I would go in terms of trying to figure, because people keep asking, well, Blacks had slaves. Well, they did, but the reason for having those slaves were different. And when you look at her life, you begin to realize, oh, that's why. She began to do the same things that her enslavers did. She would buy people off of the old plantations, bring them over to her place, provide them with a job, allow them to grow and become people. There's also some information on her that when people were being sold at auction, when women were being sold at auction, she would go and get their children and bring them to the Eliza Tevis farm in Newburg, and she would put them to work and keep them until the children could be returned to their parents or they would grow up. Well, during that time, having slaves, that made you rich. And so this lady became rich, but also she became very influential because having listened to the politics off the plantations, she was aware of who was who in the white community. And so she called on a lot of her friends that she met when she was on the plantation to do things for her. Like she asked Guthrie to be her attorney, and he did. He was a former treasurer of the United States. But she had this ability to do this, and she did it out of faith and passion for people. And her enslaving or her taking on people who had been enslaved and trying to get between them and their freedom was just something that she, I guess, just decided, I'm going to do. And she did it. As small as she was, she made a big impact everywhere. And you're going to hear more about her and some of the things that she did. But I do want us to remember that, in fact, she took the slave model and began to turn it into something that would be beneficial to the people that she brought over to the Newburg area. And incidentally, the Newburg area was a free community of Africans. It was that way. She was the first, she and her husband, and it grew from there. So I did want you to kind of visualize what was going on, and you also need to visualize that there was nothing else over there. That place was called Wet Woods. It was a swamp, and it did not deter her. She said she's going to do it anyway, and it grew and grew and grew. And this lady just had a tremendous vision, and she worked at it and worked at it until she got it right. So I just wanted to put that out there so that people would know exactly why we are so interested in what drives this particular individual. And I just think it's her kind heart and her feeling that she wanted to do good after she was emancipated. I'm going to ask Sherelle Ernestine Lyons Goodwin to talk to us somewhat about a person that many of you may have heard the name. His name was Goodwin too. And she's going to tell you about how he plays into this and keeping the whole idea of the history of Eliza Tevis alive. Sherelle?
Greetings, my name is Ernestine Sherelle Lyons Goodwin. I am a descendant of Eliza Tevis through my grandfather, John Green, who was the grandson of Mary Beard, Eliza's sister. I would like to share with you how Eliza Tevis contributed to our historical Petersburg, Newburg community. Mr. Nelson Goodwin, the historian for our community back in the 70s, said, "There is a constraining power that I will not let me forget the memories I passed down to me from our older generation. The blessings and privilege that we now enjoy are built on the foundation of our past. These blessings are a heritage purchased by the sweat, blood, and tears of people coming out of slavery, risking and giving their lives that we can enjoy our present blessings. The wealth of this community is not monetary, but a rich legacy of spiritual values such as faith, hope, love, courage, perseverance, labor, sacrifice, and suffering to reach our goals. These values seem to be disappearing from us as a race." Mr. Goodwin, with his short memory, interviewed old timers, pored over former slave owners' diaries, newspaper clippings, and deed books. These accounts of our history were written in the Courier Journal on November the 11th, 1989. He beamed as he reminisced about the intertwined histories of Petersburg and Newburg, recounting days in the early 1900s when he sat under a chestnut tree and listened to my great-granduncle, Ed Green, describe his experience as a plantation slave. He was mesmerized by his stories of the brutal life in the antebellum, meaning before the Civil War. Life back then was simple but very hard. I love those times. What gets me is that I can't believe how we were able to survive. Little information exists on how these two racial segregated communities, less than a mile from one another, along Old Chapel Road, came together to form present-day Newburg. Petersburg was settled by a free slave named Eliza Tevis and this Tevis in the 1830s. It was known as the Wet Woods, a vast swamp thought to be uninhabitable. It is only land in the area the whites would sell to blacks. Petersburg got its name from Peter Law, a free slave who built a log cabin in this area shortly after the Civil War. The original Newburg, directly south of Petersburg, was settled by 4 German immigrant families in the 1830s. Houses were built on Eliza's land she purchased, that her slave owner promised her. The historical First Baptist Church was started in her home, and Newburg School was started in the church, and they both still exist today. What a legacy. So concerned was Mr. Nelson Goodwin about the history and heritage of this community that his heart's desire was to have our history documented so that our present and future generations might always be mindful of this is whence we came, giving God all the praise, honor, and glory for choosing our family to be the descendants of such a lady of great faith as Eliza Curtis Tunde Coleman Tevis. Let us all beware lest we forget.
Thank you, Sherelle. I must tell you that Sherelle's mother, Effie Lyons, was someone who worked closely with Mr. Goodwin in trying to keep the history alive. So we got the real deal right here. We're going to ask Barbara if you would talk a little bit about your role and your presence with us here as we try to get this history together. And I know years back, there was a Courier Journal article that had Edna Earl Hikes and myself on the front cover of the Courier Journal, where they were pointing out that the slave and the slave masters kind of meet. And Barbara has been with this effort ever since, trying to be sure that the story encompass the entire picture, and that both the slaves and the slave owners. Barbara, you want to?
Well, people came here for two reasons. They came into Kentucky in 1790 is when the first hikes came, and he had acquired the land because he fought in the Revolutionary War, and so that's how he got the land. He had come from Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, after the Revolutionary War. Now, he owned slaves. I do not know how many. I know it was not very many because most of the owners, the farm owners or plantation, we argue over that a little bit, were not big enough they didn't have a crop that required hundreds, fifties of people who were enslaved, but they did need some help. Now, the Hikes had a lot of land, but they didn't have money. So, and how they acquired those first slaves, we don't have anything in the family history. I find it doubtful to think that they brought them, they came down the river, but they came from Pennsylvania. So would they have had slaves, or did they find the need for them after they got here? That's something we'll never know the answer to because we don't have any information. But they did own slaves, and they acquired quite a lot of land and slaves indicated wealth. So there were three sons. The original George who came had three sons, and he built houses and gave land to those three sons. And those houses are still around. They're still all lived in. One is on Taylorsville Road. One is on Meadow Road off Goldsmith Lane. And the third one is where I was born, and it's on Hikes Lane. And my son still lives there. And we have always been interested. In fact, I can remember going with my dad, and I was a good friend of Nelson Goodwin. And somewhere there's a picture of him. I don't know if he came to our family. We had one family reunion in 1990, and Nelson came. So it's I guess a matter of necessity. And after they were freed, they needed a place to live. So that was one of the reasons that Newburg grew up around. I think one of the Hikeses gave some land, not the best land he had, because it was in the wet woods. I mean, they might have been sort of nice, but they weren't real nice. And so I have enjoyed my new friends, and we call each other cousins. So I tell people, well, I'm going to see my Newburg cousins this afternoon. Is that what you wanted?
That's it. Thank you so much, Barbara. Appreciate that. We're gonna have a chance to answer any of the questions that you have at the end of this. In the meantime, we're gonna ask Regina Kimbrough if she would talk a bit about her church, the Forest Baptist Church. And we have some pictures of that church when it was a log cabin forward. And she's going to talk to you a little bit about exactly how that the church of today and its background.
Hello, my name is Regina Davis Kimbrough, and I am a member of Forest Baptist Church. And it was at Forest Baptist where I learned of my descendants' history to Eliza Tevis. Eliza, as we've heard, was the first freed slave to own property near the present-day Petersburg estates in Newburg. And 2 years after the end of slavery, around 1867, Forest Baptist Church was organized, and it was organized at Eliza's home. And according to the history at the church is currently located on Petersburg Road. Residents met in Eliza's home, and we've got a picture of a log cabin that we think is a replica of what her home actually looked like. So residents met in her home, and they also met and sat outdoors on tree stumps, as well as split logs to worship God and hear the gospel. The church was named Forest Baptist after the surrounding wet woods and forest near Eliza's home. And also, as we've heard, the land that she was given, it was considered a swamp and a wasteland. But Eliza was instrumental in establishing the church. And she also was interested in education because, as we've heard, the first school, Newburg School, was also housed in Forest Baptist Church. I became a member of Forest Baptist in 1992 because my grandmother was a member of Forest Baptist Church. She was baptized in the creek, as was the tradition at that time. Her husband was Robert Lee Davis, and I learned later that Robert Lee Davis was the great-grandson of Hunter Beard. Hunter Beard was Mary Beard's son. We've determined that Eliza never had children of her own, but her sister had 4 children, I believe, 4 or 5. So I am a proud member of the descendant of Eliza Tevis through the Davis family. That's it.
Okay. You want to go to the church? That's the second church. We're going to show you the pictures of the churches of Forest Baptist, the log cabin, and then the one that just went past. That's in 1894. The next one.
Which one burned in the slide?
That was the school.
I remember being in that school.
They purchased the school after the church burned because the school was going, the Jefferson County School Board was going to build another school building. So we purchased that building, and Forest Baptist Church was housed there.
And that school building, I went to school in that building,
So, yeah.
along with
Our
along
parents.
with uncels and other larger families and things that were there. It was kind of like a big one-room school, but we were 7 different places, but that was the Newburg School. I think it was called Newburg School for Color, I believe.
No, just Newburg.
Just Newburg School, yeah, okay. Okay, go ahead, next one. This is
That's the present church.
the present Forest Baptist Church. So out of Eliza Tevis's offer to hold church services at her home, you still have churches that are growing out of that first effort to get the people in the free community of Newburg together. Okay?
Yeah, we have 4 churches that come out of Forest Baptist Church.
Yes.
Still functioning in Newburg.
Go ahead, Seth.
Yeah, we have 4 churches that came out of Forest Baptist Church. As the community grew and people disagreed on what they wanted to do, Community Baptist Church, now go back. Because of the creek that divided the community, back in 1926, we did a mission church on the other side called New Addition. People were moving into the area, and they called that Forest Tabernacle Baptist Church, which is also still existing. Then Community Baptist Church came because of the disagreement of members, and they started Community Baptist Church in 1946. And then Greater Faith came out of Star Hope Baptist Church, which was also a split from Community Baptist Church. So you have those 4 churches still existing today.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That's a lot of information to digest. We're still researching, trying to find out exactly what's what, but Edna Sharif has been doing a lot of information gathering, and she is going to kind of summarize this whole thing, and she's going to give you some additional information, because as we got into it, we realized trying to authenticate things was going to be difficult. So she's even gotten into looking at the ancestry, DNA part of it too. So Edna, you want to pick up from here?
Yes, I am Edna Sharif, and I am a descendant of Eliza Tevis' sister, Mary Beard, through one of her daughters, Alice Beard, who was married to my great-grandfather, Edward Green. And I'm going to give a short snapshot of Eliza. Elizabeth, perhaps she was Curtis, was born in Virginia around 1802. She was best known as Eliza. She was enslaved by John W. Hundley on his plantation, which sat on the property we now call Dashford Manor Mall. There has been some speculation that she may have been his half-sibling. On the death of John in 1829, she became the property of his brother, Thomas C. Hundley, who also resided on John's plantation. In 1933, Thomas entered a deed of emancipation for Eliza, allowing her to call herself Eliza Hundley. Eliza was resourceful and courageous, because upon her emancipation, she hired herself out to Thomas for services to him that lasted roughly 5 years, from 1833 till his death in 1838. She was to be paid for her services because she was free and no longer enslaved, but she was not paid. This prompted her to file an affidavit in September of 1839, employing attorneys James Guthrie and Robert Tyler to bring suit against Thomas's estate for wages owed to her. Eliza may have had some value to the Hundleys because Thomas did make provisions in his will, which was probated in 1838 for Eliza, who was also called Eliza Curtis, to receive a lot and house on Green Street, now called Liberty Street, money, bedroom furnishings, and other items. Eliza was savvy and ahead of her time. And Eliza, no stranger to using legal means to protect her interests, again called upon Attorney Guthrie to draw up a prenuptial agreement for her when she married a freedman named Henry Tevis in 1843. Eliza was entrepreneurial and a community-minded leader. In 1851, Henry and Eliza purchased 40 acres of land on the South Fork of the Beargrass Creek in the wet woods from Nancy C. Bray, the first freed people to buy property in Jefferson County. They built a home on this property which allowed them to pursue their own financial improvement, and this same home was used to serve the needs and interests of the community that grew up in the Wet Woods area after the Civil War. As we said before, Eliza's home was used as a church, and she was very resourceful and useful to the community members. Eliza was assertive. In 1869, when Henry died, and his heirs and Eliza again went to court to resolve issues that his heirs had over the provisions Henry made in his will. Eliza had heart, and again at a very old age in 1870, Eliza married Richard Coleman. We're still researching to learn more about their lives as a married couple. And Eliza provided. Eliza died in 1890 and left a will in the name of Eliza Coleman. This will contained provisions for her sister Mary Beard and for Mary's sons Charles and Henry Beard. Others associated with Eliza were also provided for in this will. And at present, we are still researching for further information on Eliza, including any DNA data that might link our family's lineage through Mary Beard to the lineage of the Hundleys.
Thank you, Edna. Edna's kind of modest, but so far it looks like there probably is a biological connection between our ancestors and the Hundleys. But we've got some more work to do. And she's still getting calls and checking with people, having them to try to do DNA so we can kind of conclusively determine that there was some type of biological connection. I want to stop here, and we're going to entertain some questions. And I'm not sure how this works, Steve, but I'll turn it back to you so you can question us.
Okay. Yes, for those participants who are online here, if you wanted to ask a question, just unmute yourself and ask a question. I had several questions written down here, Nat, and fortunately, y'all have answered most of those as I was listening to the presentation. So let me see if I had any others. No, you've answered my questions already. Y'all did an excellent job of what I was interested in. Anyone else have a question? Unmute yourself.
You said that she inherited a house on Green Street. I just wondered if you knew where on Green Street it was.
It says that it was, there is an address that Penn Bogert, who was a researcher with the Pilsen Club, gave from the city directories of 521 Green Street. I'm not sure about that, but it was,
Liberty Street.
well, Liberty,
It's
at that
called
time it
Liberty.
was Green
Liberty
Street.
Street.
It's Liberty now. And it would have been somewhere between Preston and Floyd on Green Street.
So that would have been on East Green Street then.
East, yes, East Green Street, yes.
And more than likely, that number 521 probably was changed because in 1909, they changed all the street numbers. So we would have to go back
Okay.
and see, but I can do that research. I'd love to go down and, yeah, I could check that out and let Nat know what I
Yeah.
find out about that.
Definitely good. Green Street Baptist Church was organized, Forest Baptist Church, to become established. Is right there on that street where she had her house, Green on Liberty, Green Street Baptist Church. I think it's on Gray now.
Green Street is on Gray Street now.
Right.
Okay.
I'd like to speak. Could I, Steve?
Yes, go ahead, Martina.
First of all, I am so thrilled to see these folks meet with us today. I've done a little bit with them in the past. Hello, I still have some things you sent me and I haven't lost them.
I did.
This is such an exciting project on so many levels. And I first encountered the story of Eliza Tevis through the late Dr. Blaine Hudson, who, when I was the director of exhibits at the Center for African American Heritage, and we were formatting what was to be our storyline, we did highlight Miss Tevis in the exhibit that was to appear, and it never has appeared. And the thing about Miss Tevis and other people like her is that they remind us that what we think folks were capable of post-slavery is today is very different from what happened post-slavery back in the day. As a female entrepreneur, I mean, that's amazing. As you know, and of course we were always given the worst property to do something with, and to think that she essentially initiated a community that still survives, that out of that church that was later built, 4 churches, I believe was said earlier, still survive. So I love it when families of the enslaved and let's see, step families, Miss Barbara, come forth and really do the research with passion regarding those that went before us. And they are doing a good job of reminding us of these stories we have forgotten. They're doing a good job of raising the issue between the relationships between the enslaved and those who own them. They're giving a new look to history that I think is important to help us as a larger society realize that we're all one big family, however disjoint and confused, and that the heritage of Black people, and as an African American, I take every opportunity to say this, is not violence. It is not lack of wanting an education or any of those things. The folks that came out of slavery believing all things were possible. And Eliza Tevis is an example of such a person. So just glad to see you guys. You know, I'm long-winded, but glad to see you today.
Excellent comments, Martina. Excellent. Other comments? Any other questions? Well, unless there's no other questions, Nat, y'all want to continue on with any additional information?
Is there anybody else want to add anything we might have missed? Anything we might have missed? We're tickled to death to have the Louisville Historical Society League to want to hear from us, and we hope we can do some things together in the future. We're trying to get this message out, and hopefully people begin to realize, but I thought Martina hit the nail on the head. The whole idea of the free African in this community is one of contributions, and they really added value to what was going on. And even though they were out of slavery, they still managed to contribute. And we just want to find more out about how it was done. We don't know, I don't think we know that Eliza Tevis was educated formally. We think she probably was not. Somehow she seems to be the smartest person in the house around there, and even to her dealings with the two brothers, the Hundley brothers, and the other people who owned the plantations and things around them. She seemed to be quite capable of holding her own, which is really fascinating that she learned that you go to court when things don't suit you. And we found that she pops up quite often with suits and things like this, demanding her rights. So when we talk about the marches and things that people are doing now, it's not unusual that people got upset and took things into their own hands to try to get it changed. Anything else you want?
I think Eliza observed what was going on around her because of the fact that everything that she signed, she used the X as her mark.
Yeah.
And if you look at some of the census records, it usually says that she couldn't read and she couldn't write. But even though she couldn't do those things formally, she definitely was an observer of what was going on around her, and she was definitely educated in what the people around her did and the value that it held and what you could do if you did X, Y, Z. And she definitely modeled that throughout her life. So her education was not formal, but she was definitely educated.
Good point.
Can I say something?
Yes, go right ahead, Janice.
This is Janice Carter Miller. I am so.
Hi, Janice.
Hey,
How are you?
hey, how y'all doing?
Hey.
I just want to know.
Janice,
Yes.
excuse me. I want everybody to know that you are the incarnation of Eliza Tevis.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm glad you remembered that. But I just wanted to say, I saw all the people that are on this Zoom. Is there any way that we can start all coming together to meet each other? Because what Eliza did, Eliza was what the kids would say today was a really good ear hustler. Okay, that means she was listening to everything everybody was saying. And she could put everything together. And we as her descendants, we have been able to persist in prolonging our heritage and learning more about it, but we also need to meet each other. I'm just thrilled. I want to meet as many descendants as possible. And I think the next time that we get together, all these people that are on this Zoom, you know, this society is sure enough a society. And we've got a story to tell. And the more we talk, the more story comes out. And the more I'm touched. So I just want to say that I'm very proud to be a descendant. And I am thankful for all the work that you all have done thus far. And let's just keep it going.
Excellent.
Okay. We will be getting together more and more.
As a matter of fact, we're working on it now. Sherelle, you have a date?
We are trying to get in contact with every member that every person that has the Eliza Tevis descendants to come together on February the 24th on
Oh, that's day after tomorrow.
yes. Is that right? Is that the date I do?
That's what we came up with, so.
That's what we came up with first, that we were gonna have a Zoom meeting to take and try to get as many people as we can who are our descendants of Eliza Tevis. If not, then we will also be doing it in May. The Newburg, Petersburg, the Petersburg Newburg Cemetery Committee has a fish fry on Memorial Day. And we thought we would get together then, buy fish from the cemetery and sit down and fellowship together at that day too. But that's Memorial Day.
Oh.
So you can put that on your calendar.
So Memorial Day this year, you're at the cemetery, is that correct?
Yes, the historical Petersburg Newburg Cemetery.
Okay,
And it's right there where Elijah was buried at. We call it our homestead, the corner of Petersburg Road and Indian Trail, right
okay,
behind Starhope Baptist Church.
okay. Well, excellent. Well, we'll document that and get the word out.
And
I like-
Steve, there is a question in the chat.
Okay, yeah, I saw that from Carl Kramer. Carl Kramer was wondering, Nat, if you taught at the Institute of Community Development. Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. Yes, I graduated from there. Yeah.
Okay,
Who's
so
that?
Carl Kramer, Dr. Carl Kramer, he's a historian in Southern Indiana. He was a student of yours or connected to you in some manner. But anyways, he's on the Zoom and was just wanting to say hi. So,
Hey, hi. I need to know who he is more.
okay. But anyway.
That's way back. He must be old too.
But anyways, we will send you the Zoom link, Nat, when this is all done. We'll send you the YouTube link and you can distribute it to everyone. And I also wanted to say that I am in the process right now of building a new clinic for Newburg community there. It's actually on Bardstown Road, just to the east of the Newburg community. And it will be open later this fall, but it's called the Buchel Newburg Community Health Center. Park Duval is actually, I think, Nat, you were connected to Park Duval or helped start that, I believe. But
Yeah.
Health Center. And
You
so
have a Newburg Park de Bar over in the, on Bardstown Road.
correct. So we will let everyone,
It's called Park Duval Newburg Clinic, Health Clinic.
that's correct.
So are you gonna be taking over that one?
Yes, we're actually building a new one. Right now, that one is over off Hikes Lane and Bardstown Road. And we're gonna move it. It's gonna be at Bardstown Road and what's called Reynolds Lane. It's under construction right now, and we'll invite everyone out to the open house when it's completed later this year. And maybe we're gonna even put up some information about Eliza Tevis there in the health center. And all. So that would be a good legacy for her, because Nat was connected to Park Duval, which of course this Newburg Center is owned by Park Duval. So a lot of connections there. And I'll make sure Nat is aware of this and he can pass along the information. Should be open this coming November or December, but it's under
That would be
construction. Right now.
interesting. That would be interesting because she was known for caring for people. She cared for the Hundleys and different people in the community when they got sick. So
Yeah.
quite apropos.
We'll let you know. Well, anyways, without further ado, if that's okay, any other questions? Let me see in the chat here. I don't see any other questions. Anyone else have a question for the group before we sign off?
That's it.
Well, thank y'all very much. This was very enlightening and informative, and I hope everyone enjoyed it. And we'll send the YouTube link along here very shortly.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank y'all.